Because I detect a certain optimism around the place, around the club, around the city for this season. I'm not suggesting that you're going to be challenging for perhaps the top spot, but that things will be better this time around. Do you feel that?
I think everybody's hoping for that, yes, and there is some anticipation, I think, amongst our group. I'm not too sure about the rest of the community, but we've done enough stuff in the work area, like where we've worked hard, physically hard, and tactically we've practiced lots of things. But I think I keep saying to the guys, whatever we can do early on, we really should be much better than that, and we are likely to be much better than that as the season goes. We've got quite a few new players in our team from into key roles in our team, and therefore they're going to take some time, as almost every team does. We need to not pressure ourselves with wanting to lead the competition after 4 games or whatever. So we just need to focus on making sure that we compete really well and try to put into practice the stuff we've done in training all these weeks.
Most teams, or for most teams, it'll be whoever settles the quickest, presumably, will start to get into some kind of rhythm.
Yeah, but I think early season it's not unusual for some teams to start with a bang and fizzle out, and in the same way there are teams that struggle to start with and develop into better teams as the season goes on. Everybody would like to hit the ground running and just keep on winning, but in a Super League world that doesn't happen, not for anyone anymore.
I think it was 2 wins out of 2 at the start of the last season, wasn't it? So it doesn't always tell the tale what happens in the first few games.
No. And that's, we haven't even thought about back then. I'm aware of it, and the boys that were here would be aware of that, those results from last season. And we're just, as I say, we've put so much work into preparation for this season, and in the last few days into trying to cover the things that'll help us to beat Widnes.
Is it a bigger game because Widnes were in the same section at the end of last season that you were?
They were, but nobody was in our section really last year. We were so far behind we couldn't hear the band. It was just sort of one fix-it job after another, even right until the very end of the season. So this time we've had the opportunity to be constructive, and in front of things. So our first test is coming right up.
You mentioned that obviously you've got some new players in. Every club has new players in. We're likely to see a few debuts in the game against Widnes.
I'm telling my team if you like.
That'd be great.
Ben James Bishops at fullback, and Reece Min, Joe Arundel, and Bill Tupu and Tom Johnson are our backs, and Milky Miller and Liam Finn are our halves. The back row is Kermond and Tiarona, who's making his debut, and the other forwards are Stu Howarth, England, and Scruton are up front for us to start. So again, Engie will be making his debut for our club. I think I missed Ashurst there in the forwards as well, in the back row. So that leaves us with a bench of Anthony Tupu, Anderson, Malloy, and Mikey Seo.
And the strength of that bench shows how far you've come, I think, doesn't it? Because there were at times when you were here last season that you were perhaps struggling to fill the bench.
It was almost you and me at some stages. Yeah. We were scratching to find. Well, we took 18 players to Catalans last year, and they were the only 18 we had. That was the reality, and I think that happened to us a couple of times last season, where we virtually had no choice in selection. So really that leaves us with Jason Walton has joined us this year, and he has moved heaven and earth in pre-season. He's been absolutely outstanding, and I couldn't find a spot for him. Hall, Gibson, Anakin, those types of guys haven't made our top 17 this week. So we feel we've got much more depth, it's now a matter of whether we've got the quality within our group and the performance quality, scrapbooks and talent and all that sort of stuff. You know, other teams will say they've got more than we have there, and we'd probably have to, you know, say, yep. But it's how we combine, it's how we go with injuries. But it's the biggest question for us really is, can we match it? Can we compete with other teams for quality? So again, I'd like to think it's yes, but we'll find out soon.
And you named your team lineup a couple of debutants, and there is lots of positivity around the place and with the supporters. Is there a real sense from you that this is a fresh start from last season, a fresh start for the club?
Oh yeah, that's the one thing that's definitely there, and you know, as it should be in any club's pre-season. If you're not optimistic now, you know, you really need to check yourself. You know, I suppose there's times where you can have a series of injuries in pre-season. But we've got we're missing Mika Simon and Scotty Moore, who, you know, I would presume those two guys would make our first team squad most weeks. So we've got a little bit more to add there. But in general, yes, we've gone about things positively. Last year's just a dead marine as far as we're concerned. It's gone. We got a second chance to have another crack at Super League, so we're going to have a crack at it.
And a good chance to preserve that optimism in front of the home fans here at the weekend.
Yeah, well, fans are, you know, there are some fans who they're just not happy unless they're unhappy. I'm aware of that. Yeah, there's always something to whinge about the coach or whatever, and I'm a bit like that with my Arsenal team. When I get disappointed with performances and whatever, but in general, I think, you know, there needs to be a strong feeling of support for our club in general. So I hope and I'm pretty confident there's definitely a hardcore of a couple of thousand people who are solid, and it's the other 6 or 8 or 10 that we'd like to have on board with us. And I understand there's a winning factor in that, but we'll see.
And what are you expecting from Widnes?
Oh, they've been in raging hot form in pre-season. You know, we've looked at a couple of their pre-season games against Halifax and particularly against St Helens. If there's anyone playing better than them right now, you know, we haven't seen it. So, and they put bucket loads of points on us here last year. I think they beat Wakefield 3 times. So Kevin Brown played like, you know, it was a mix between, you know, Wally Lewis and Attila the Hun. You know, he just absolutely carved us up last year. So we know what they're capable of. We know roughly what types of things they like to do. But meeting them physically they're a big team.
A tough start this Widnes, and then a derby against Cass, and then Hull first 3 games.
Yeah, so we know, you know, but there's no such thing as a small game for Wakefield, mate. They're all big games for us.
Cheers, Brian.